Today, we're going to be taking a look back at one of the most popular Battle Royale games of all time, H1Z1. From its humble beginnings to its peak popularity, and then its eventual downfall. This is the story of the rise and the fall of H1Z1. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into this retrospective journey. H1Z1 was released way back in 2015, and it was one of the very first games in the Battle Royale genre, a fresh and risky new game type back then. But it quickly gained momentum and became a fan favourite, attracting a massive following. Players loved the intense gameplay, its open world environment, and the thrill of being the last one standing. H1Z1 originated as a zombie survival game with a Battle Royale mode packaged into it, letting users choose which they wanted to play all from one interface. It was a perfect blend. The survival mode was a simplistic setup, with players being able to use the same weapons and vehicles as the Battle Royale mode, but also build their own bases and go against clans. It was fun to play with friends. In 2016, Daybreak Games announced that they would be splitting H1Z1 into two separate games. The survival proportion would be segmented into H1Z1 Just Survive, and the Battle Royale mode would be released as a standalone game, now as a free-to-play known as H1Z1 King of the Kill, which was during the height of its popularity. This move was a little too late, although its move to free-to-play saw H1Z1 maintain a plethora of players for quite some months. As the popularity of H1Z1 continued to gather speed and to grow, so did its competitive scene. Tournaments were planned around the world, and the best players in the game's in-game leaderboards from each of the server's regions battled it out for cash prizes. It seemed H1Z1 was on top of the world, but unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. H1Z1's esports scene was experimental, but was one of the most exciting and competitive aspects during its peak popularity, being the perfect fast-paced arcade-style title for viral clips and awe-inspiring gameplay, the reason why Daybreak invested so heavily into it. It would begin with the original online tournaments that were hosted, known as the Showdown, which took place every season, where each region's top players went head-to-head in a Battle Royale game for the chance to win exclusive skins and cosmetics, originally the Showdown trophies and the sought after Showdown AR-15, later which would come in full metallic gold with an animated shine to them, which would sell for thousands of dollars online on the Steam market, when trading was later made freely available and unlocked for most skins in the game, but this would be some time later. As well as the Showdown, H1Z1 broke out more officially into the esports scene with a H1Z1 Invitational, which would first take place during the TwitchCon convention back in 2015 and then 2016. This tournament brought together some of the best players who played in the Showdowns, some streamers, and some personalities that were invited to compete for a share of the $250,000 prize pool. The event was a huge success, establishing H1Z1 as a serious player in the esports scene. Later came the controversial H1Z1 Pro League, bringing a promised base minimum salary to be paid out to players under different organizations who would compete. But as the popularity of H1Z1 began to dwindle and it went into decline, so did its esports scene, which would also suffer. The developers shifted their focus onto other projects. The esports scene lost much of its funding and thus momentum, and multiple partners came on to take control of the reins of the game, warping it into different directions for a few months at a time with little success. Many players of the league lived in hope of a new season's return, and many claimed to have not even been paid by their orgs or the H1Z1 Pro League itself. It was the cause of a lot of friction. Like all other online competitive games, H1Z1 had a significant issue with cheating throughout its lifespan. Cheating in H1Z1 was rampant, mostly so-called closet cheating, in which players would try to hide their cheats and climb the leaderboard, using software like aimbots for auto-aiming, or wall hacks to see players through walls, or even going so far as to exploit glitches like walking through walls. A lot of streamers were accused of cheating, with rampant numbers of exposed videos and reports on the top players and streamers to the likes of Stormin TV and Eric Triceps, perhaps the top two most infamous players in the game, who would both routinely get 20 to 30 plus kill games and be constantly accused of hacks, cases that were of course never proved and saw no bans.
Dude, you hacker! Yeah, do that. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna do that in your mum tonight. You can. Fuck. Yeah, die.
H1Z1 always suffered from a multitude of glitches, but the game never seemed to suffer from these alone, although they would occasionally cause players to rage quit or quit momentarily, but always they would seem to come back. Issues like hit detection when firing shots at enemies, random deaths, and problems with fall damage and their velocity speed causing spontaneous deaths in game would cause a lot of problems, but they'd also make for some hilarious viral clips. But the downfall of H1Z1 began when the game's developers, Daybreak, made some controversial alterations to the core of the game. It all began with a so-called combat update, which was an attempt for Daybreak to stay relevant, around the time of the huge breakout success of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, aka PUBG, a game headed by PlayerUnknown, or Brendan Green, who originally helped Sony Online Entertainment, the original creators of H1Z1, with creating the original H1Z1 Battle Royale mode, which was of course based upon the success of PlayerUnknown's successful Battle Royale mod for the game Arma 2. Many fans were becoming increasingly unhappy with the updates, and they started to lose interest in the game. It became a tug of war in which the developers tried to issue updates to please the community, who would go back and forth on keeping or wanting to change these new additions, causing a huge divide between the community where the developers received a lot of hate and backlash over any decision they made. Players felt that H1Z1 was losing its original charm, that it was becoming too commercialized, and that the changes to the core shooting mechanics, which seemed like almost every season at this point, were so frustrating to completely relearn, and due to such controversial changes and the stubborn nature of the developers not wanting to revert them, brand new games such as PUBG and later Fortnite Battle Royale became ever more attractive for ex-H1 players to migrate to, with a lot of hugely popular streamers like Dr. Disrespect moving to PUBG and Ninja moving to Fortnite and seeing immense success. H1Z1 under new management would re-release the so-called pre-Season 3's game features and mechanics, which are basically the features from its most popular time during 2016 before everything was changed. This was a last-ditch attempt to revive the game, which saw a surge of players return. This would happen multiple times when hype was recreated, but the issues of the game was still there: a lack of content, a game neglected by developers who couldn't keep up with regular updates, one that seemingly couldn't keep up with the new players who had entered the market. Nowadays, H1Z1 is still available to play, but it's a far cry from the game that it once was, a shell of its former self. The Steam market was disabled, putting a stop to any form of skin trading, killing the in-game economy, and preventing players even displaying their skins on their Steam profiles or even holding them in their inventories. The servers are practically dead, with barely any players in game, with only veteran players clinging on to the game they once loved, sitting in the game's in-game training mode, practically AFK. It serves as a reminder of what once was, and how quickly things can change in the gaming industry, and how trends come and go, and the dangers of neglecting player feedback from the community can cause a damper on the lifespan of even the most popular titles. The community, however, still try to maintain the spirit and life of H1Z1 to this day, although most have accepted its fate and moved on at this point, a reality which I had to face. One great example is its modern community, specifically the Project PS3 community, who figured out how to decompile the game's assets in order to create special custom skins and cosmetics, breathing new life into the game by making their own gun skins and mixing and matching particle effects from others, even sharing their own resource packs to other players to play with. The original purpose of this project was to release mods that changed the graphics, menus, icons, sounds, and particle effects back to the ones from the early so-called golden days of H1Z1, which they successfully achieved, and it's so very nostalgic to play with, along with the features which Daybreak also reverted. It's practically like playing H1Z1 in 2016, just without the player base. Furthermore, the H1 Emu project is also very promising. It's a project based on love for the game's once very prosperous survival game mode, Just Survive, aiming to develop a private server architecture to emulate the game and its features, to bring it back to play with friends and members of the community on servers. To date, they've made some solid headway with bringing back some of its features, such as the basic shooting and some looting mechanics, and being able to explore the classic map. Although there's still a long way uphill to go to bring a polished version of the game, with more features that actually make it more playable. But there's some hope in sight, and it's these passion projects which keep the underground community that remains alive to this day. And there you have it, the rise and fall of H1Z1. Despite its eventual decline, it will always hold a special place in the hearts of its most dedicated fans, who look back on it with fondness and nostalgia goggles. Thanks for watching. Do you remember H1Z1? Did you love it or did you hate it? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.